Hey beautiful people, welcome back to Beyond Nihility. In this video, we're gonna try to continue going through our Brush Studio properties. So until now, we have covered from stroke path till wet mix. So continuing with the Brush Studio settings, we have color dynamics next. So you can control on how your color should be, how the hue and saturation should work like when you draw a stroke or when you lay a stamp on the screen at different levels. So you can see that there's something called a stamp color jitter, which works at the stamp level. There is something called as stroke color jitter, which kind of varies with every stroke that you draw. And there's something that's related to pressure as well. And there is something that's related to tilt and barrel roll. So barrel roll, I would not be able to showcase much because I have Apple Pencil 2nd generation, and barrel roll is something that comes with the pro versions of Apple Pencil, which I do not have currently, and sadly I would not be able to showcase this particular feature, but I will try to find some videos where it has been showcased and I'll link it in the description for you. So coming to the first one that we have is stamp color jitter. So as the name suggests, it works at the stamp level. So in order to understand this a little better, we are going to go to the stroke path and we'll try to set some space between each stamp. So you'll be able to notice how all these values will differ between each stamp. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to increase the spacing over here. And just for our clarity, I'm going to go ahead and reduce the opacity so that each of my stamp is of same opacity, right? So coming back to color dynamics. So the first setting that we have is hue. So in order to notice better, we're gonna go and pick a color, probably red. Yeah, all of my stamps are red right now. So let's try and change the hue of the stamp. So you can see that as and when I'm varying my hue bar over here, the colors for individual stamps are changing right here. So if I increase the hue to maximum, it means that I'm allowing my brush to jitter through a larger spectrum of color. For example, if I set it to only 30% or 50%, only 50% of the color spectrum, the entire color spectrum will be considered for each of the stamps that are over here. So there was one thing that I noticed while I was trying out the hue saturation, that is the colors that come out when you set the hue to max will also depend on the saturation value that you set. For example, if you set the saturation value to max, you can see that the colors are much more saturated now. And I could also see that every time I draw a stroke, the spectrum of color that was assigned to each of these stamps was kind of random. So the next setting that you have is lightness. So lightness kind of brings that random light colors in your stamps when you're drawing a stroke. And opposite to lightness, you have something called as darkness as well, which kind of brings a darker color to random stamps in your stroke. You can see that as and when I'm increasing the value of darkness, you start to see much more darker colors. And if I reduce it, there will be lighter colors because my lightness is set to max. The next setting that you have is secondary color. Now secondary color, if you set it to max, then there will be maximum randomness between the range of colors that are selected for your stamps that lie between your primary color and the secondary color. Now I know this is very confusing, so let's just set it to max and let's go to our canvas, where I'll be able to show you on how the colors will vary if you set the secondary color jitter to maximum. Now, if you come to the color palette, there is something called as primary color and the secondary color. So you can see that I've set the primary color to some value over here and my secondary color is set to some value. You can see that the most of the stamps that are falling under this are ranging from this color till this color. There are one or two random stamps that are falling out of this range. The reason it's happening is because we have set some lightness, darkness, and saturation value. So in order to make sure that our stamps are staying strictly in between the primary and the secondary color, I'll try to reduce all of this, and I'll also reduce the saturation. I'll keep my hue to somewhere over 30, and let's see how our colors look like now. So I see that these are the primary and secondary colors. So when I'm drawing a stroke, you can see that the colors are strictly falling between this particular color and this particular color range. Now, before moving on to the stroke color jitter next, let's go ahead and reduce the spacing. Let's clear our drawing pad and we'll come back to color dynamics. So I'm gonna reduce these previous settings just so that the stamps and the strokes are not of different color. Okay, now coming to color jitter at stroke level, all of these settings kind of have the same meaning. The only difference is when you draw an individual stroke, how should your color look like is what is determined in stroke color jitter. Now the first one is hue. So hue, I'll set it to maximum and I'll try to vary the saturation, and you can see that the individual strokes that I'm drawing are of different colors. Now this can be a really helpful tool if you're planning to create a lettering brush and if you're into calligraphy. The next setting that we have is lightness again, and this acts the same as in stamp color jitter. This will bring those random lightness to your individual brush strokes. And coming to secondary color again, it has the same purpose as in the stamp color jitter. So let's try and reduce the saturation, lightness and hue to about 30 or 29%, and let's go ahead and select our primary and secondary colors to see how it looks like. So this time I'm going for the warmer tones. So there is something like this. So let's go ahead and clear this thing and see how our individual strokes are varying. You can see that it is strictly lying in between the primary color and the secondary color spectrum. Coming back to the Brush Studio, I'm going to reduce this and I'm going to clear the drawing pad. The next two settings that you have is color pressure and color tilt. In order to understand a little better, I'm going to draw something with the very light pressure first, and then I'll increase the pressure. So you can see that wherever I've increased the pressure, more number of colors are being selected in the color spectrum. Likewise, you can set either the darkness or the lightness using the brightness scale over here, as and when you put the pressure on your pencil. Again, there's something called a secondary color here as well. So let's keep the saturation to 0 and let's set the hue value to about 30% or so, and we'll see how it looks on the canvas. Let's clear this out, and we have these particular two colors selected for as our primary and secondary colors. So if I increase the pressure or decrease the pressure, all my colors are kind of lying in this spectrum that I've chosen in the color wheel. Coming back to the Brush Studio, you have something called as color tilt as well. This again works similar to the color pressure or even stroke color and the stamp color. Only difference is, as in when you tilt your pencil on the canvas, using these settings you can decide the color range for your brush strokes. So let's try to increase the hue over here. Let me just clear the drawing pad and let's try drawing some stroke using different tilt angles, and let's try to increase the saturation over here. You can see that wherever I have tilted my pencil, more number of colors are being selected. The brightness again works the similar as in the other settings as well. You can determine how much darkness or lightness to add in your strokes as and when you tilt your pencil. And secondary color as well works the same way. So let's go ahead and reduce the hue to some value and increase the secondary color to maximum, and let's go and test it on the canvas. So I'm going to clear this one and I'm going to tilt the pencil a little bit, and you can see that the colors are varying from my primary color to secondary. Coming back to the Brush Studio, you have something called as color barrel rule. So sadly, I would not be able to showcase this particular setting as my pencil does not support the color barrel rule. So that is all I have for this particular video. If you found this video helpful, then please consider subscribing to the channel. We are 196 subscribers as of today, and I'm very glad for all the support that you have given. So continue supporting and make sure you grab my free brushes that I've created. The link will be available in the description. I'll also leave a link to my entire Brush Studio playlist where I've discussed all the properties until now. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and bye-bye.